You know what I think would be fun? Ripping the battery all apart and building it again. So, of course, this begs the question, why? In the end of the last video, I was talking about how these are too long, and a lot of you had a great suggestion of taking the longer ones and just cleaving them in half and making two shorter ones, saving half the edges, or half the ring terminals. Brilliant idea. But then I started thinking, the core issue is that 4-gauge wire is really stiff. So the 4-gauge wire on the Anchor website says that it is 19 square millimeters. And that got me thinking, these are 5 square millimeter. This is 10 gauge. 4 of these is 20 square millimeter. Can I make a flexible bus bar out of 4 more flexible wires? Would that give me an overall more flexible bus bar? So the first thing I'm going to do before I rip this apart is just try to make a bus bar out of these things. See if it actually works. Oh, balls. That was my torque wrench slamming into the ground. So now the question is, can I put 4 of these into one barrel? This is 10 gauge, right? This is number 10. What's the difference between number 10 and 10 gauge? 50 volt, number 10, GPT, 50 volt. Oh, it's only rated for 50 volt. What? Well, that's okay. Well, it goes to 52. This was wire I bought a while ago. Maybe this isn't what I want. Starting over, so I picked up 100 feet of 10 gauge, 5 square millimeter wire. Where's my cutters? If I was more professional, I would have, gathered up all of my tools before I started recording. Oh, there they are. So let's see what length I want. If I thought it was annoying to make the other cables, oh, this won't be annoying because this will work, my strippers. I want to cut about 1 centimeter off the end. That seems about right. I have no idea if this is going to work. But you know what? Even if it doesn't, I'm going to put it in the video. Because experimenting and failing is part of the process. I hope this works. Even if it'd be really annoying to make a whole lot of these, I think this is going to make a better bus bar. And if there's an electrician watching this, and you think I'm about to make a mistake, by all means, please let me know. This is one of these things that's really slow at first, but very quickly you get the hang of it. Now, I might actually have to cut the insulation back further because this here is designed, I got that. This here is designed for all of the cables to be in one insulation. I'm going to have the insulation of the 4 wires bumping into each other, so I may need to strip them back, leave more exposed wire so that I can punch them in together, but that'll be okay because I'll put the insulation over it. But let's try first this way. One of the things I've learned in IT is that when you think there's going to be a problem and you try to account for it, you spend more time fixing problems that didn't exist or that wouldn't have existed, and oftentimes causing problems that didn't have to exist. Okay, let's see if this idea is dead out of the gate. It's not really coming together properly, but I think it's about the same size. I'm going by spec sheets. I didn't actually measure this myself. That actually looks like it might be able to work. It's not crimped yet, so I've got to hold it carefully, but you can see the 4 little wires. I should probably name this channel How to Do Things the Slow and Annoying Way with the Digital Mermaid. And if this actually works, I'm going to laugh my arse off. Well, it seems to be in there tight. So the red is the 4-gauge, and the black is obviously the one we just did with the 4 of them. I think that's about the same amount of wire. Now, I would test resistance to see if I could measure a difference, but as a lot of you pointed out in the last time I was measuring the bus bars, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference without a micro resistance tester. Now, as I say this, a certain something showed up in my mail today from a certain somebody. This showed up in my mail. And I know it's an internal resistance tester at the very least, but I believe it's also a micro-ohm tester. If it is, I literally got this today and I have no idea how to use it. You know who you are. I might be sending you an email on how to use this. Thank you. Let us take a little bit more insulation off to try to get them all to the same point. These are nicely lined up. All right, so I'm going to take there's a little bit extra wire sticking out here. I'm going to take a little bit of that off. Not that it really matters, but, you know, aesthetics. I'm going to do this over the garbage can, because this is going to make a mess. It sounded like it was raining. That was actually really cool. Okay, so as soon as the crimper bites onto the ring terminal, I'm making sure that the rest of it is pushed in. So I've got like a squeezing pressure between the wire pushing this way and the ring terminal, which is held by the crimper. Okay, so now the question is this any more flexible? And I can, well, okay, time to disconnect the battery. So the nice thing about this one is I can fold it in pretty much any direction. Because it's got the independent wires, well, let's actually just try it and see how it looks. I am not so confident in my grand idea anymore. See, the trick is, the shorter I make these, the stiffer they get. If I make this short enough to basically go from one end to the other, it's going to get really tight. And it's going to either, if I leave some extra length, it's going to push them apart. Basically, this isn't flexible enough, is the problem. So it's pushing it apart still. This is a lot harder to, well, if I flip it up like that, I almost get like a ribbon cable. You know what? I can bend it and it holds its shape. I'm not torquing this. I just want to see how it lays down. Oop, you couldn't see what I was doing. Poop. Okay, so all I did was I tightened these down. I didn't torque it. I just wanted to get them tight. How well did the two packs move separate? Okay, that's that. So left or right, that's got that resistance. That has more resistance for sure. Is this worth the effort? Is this good enough? Okay, so what I need to do to figure this out is I'm going to take one of my longer bus bars and I'm going to cut it down to the same size. And then I will swap them back and forth. So I'm going to cut that about here. How precise do I have to get this? If I make this exactly the right length, it's not going to have any flexibility. But the wire is so thick. Sorry, so far this episode is coming across as very boring in my head because I'm just thinking and second guessing constantly. Well, if it was easy, there wouldn't be anything to test now, would there? So I should not be complaining. Easy is not fun. Yeah, see, there's the problem right there. Now, because this is a lot shorter, which is what I would have to do to avoid, this bridging over here, it means there's not much flex in it anymore, and you see how it's pushing the batteries apart, and it's really hard to push them back together, and even when I do, it torques up. When these are actually bolted down, it's going to be even stiffer. So the only other option would be, where's the other side of that I just cut? Would be to figure out what is the greatest radius I can get that keeps me contained within the width of the pack. Maybe that's the way to go. Oh, I'm going to burn so many. Okay, I need something. I need something. 1 second. I can go that flexible, that much of a curve, and not push against the back wall or against the other battery. All right, let's see what this looks like. It's actually not looking too bad. Okay, so these are brought together. I'm getting some shifting this way. The wire's giving. I bought this giant roll of 10 gauge because I was so confident in this idea. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make one this length. There we go. To make sure I'm getting them the same length. That's how I'm lining it up. So the difference this time is, so this time I took more insulation off to give the insulation on the 4 little wires being really close to the base of the barrel was putting a lot of outward pressure on the wires. So I cut it back a bit further, and I also made it a bit longer. So you can see, well, you can't really see at this point, but let me put the other end on. That'll make it more clear. So because I cut the insulation back all the way, can you see that? The wires here are sticking out a bit. So as I crimp it, I'm pulling it back. And I can gauge that by putting my finger over the end of the barrel. And then I look to make sure that it stays, the flat part of the ring terminal stays in the same alignment as the already crimped side. And being careful not to catch my finger in the crimp. That would suck. So you can see the difference between the first and second try. Made this one a little bit longer, left more exposed wire on both sides. And now let's see how this sits. That definitely feels more flexible. This feels like it's putting a lot less pressure on the ring terminal when I tighten it down. When I tighten down the single 4 gauge, it never sits perfectly flat, right? Like one of them's cooked up, so it has to be pressed down. This doesn't feel like the same kind of tension on the post. When I try to look like this side-to-side motion, it doesn't fight it nearly as much because you can see the individual wires in the bus bar. Oh, you can't see that. Let me move you over again. I hope this is coming through on the camera, but when I move these now, the 4 sub-wires in the bus bar, whatever you want to call them, they all move slightly independently, and it means that I get much less resistance now moving that front to back and moving it. I think this might be the way to go. Before I do that though, there's something else I am going to do with this rebuild, not just the flexible bus bars, and I'm going to use this cell as my first experiment. As I get closer and closer to the final assembly of these packs, it's now time to start thinking about insulation. So this is Benacrete 2mm something protection. I'll find the link where I bought it off Amazon. I really need a bigger desk, and that is something I never thought I was going to say. So that's how it's going to sit with positive this way. So what I want to do I'm going to wrap this around like this, and that way this and this side will be padded. And I'll do the same L shape on all of the batteries. So the last batteries will be on the outside and in. So when I'm done, this face and this outer face will be padded. This face and this face will not. So these batteries are going to get on, this battery will get all 4 sides. These batteries will get 3 sides. And then that'll put padding all the way around. I hope that makes sense. If not, you'll see when I do it. It's sticking to my adult apple juice. Don't spill the precious liquid. Come across like this. There. So cutting this, extremely careful not to cut the blue jacket, so I'm going to bring it this way so I can see it. There. Oh, and I got to do the top now. So I'm going to do this to all of the cells, and when I put them back together like this, that padding will now protect the cells from rubbing against each other. So I'm going to turn off the camera, finish disassembling the batteries, and put those on. You've seen one, you'll have seen them all. So you can see I have added the foam padding all around all the batteries. So now that that's in, I've got 2 millimeters extra spacing all around. So you can see, looking straight down, the curve of this doesn't go outside of the battery. So if it was the back, actually let's put it on the back right now. If the box wall was here, it would not be bumping up against it. So I wouldn't have any rubbing concerns there either. So now the question becomes, do I make 15 more of these cursed little things? So the alternative is one solid bus bar. It still pushes the 2 batteries apart. You can see the gap that's there. What is better? Keeping these things flat against the battery terminals is certainly easier with this one. So one end rotating along the axis is certainly easier with the 4 10-gauge wires instead of the single 4-gauge wire. What's your opinion, Lynx? Should I use the flexible bus bars or only the little flexible bus bars? I'm not quite sure which one you're telling me. I got an idea. Let's put these on the ground and see which one you sniff first. Which one should I use? Okay, you're standing over the flexible bus bar. Is that because my finger was there? I don't think that was a very scientific test. You're adorable, but you're not helping me solve my problem. Which one should I use, Kitty? also out of apple juice. So I didn't film it because work came up and I had to be on a conference call while I was doing this. But you can see which decision I've made. If I'm going to buy rolls of wire and extra ring terminals, I'm not going to quit at the finish line and not actually build it and test it. Do I think this is better? Do I think it's worth it? I don't know, but screw it. Let's make them. And I assure you, you didn't miss anything exciting with me cutting them up. I will just restate that the first one I cut became the template I used to cut all of the others. In fact, I'm just going to turn off the camera and magically the ends will be on. So I wasn't going to record making all these cables because that's half the channel at this point. But I thought I would show making one of them now that I'm starting to get the hang of it. It's annoying, of course, but it's not that annoying with the right tools. I get one connector wedged in there just to hold it. And then I'm taking a pair of four, a pair is two, a set of four, and I'm stripping one end. That's not long enough, a little bit longer, please. Damien at Brewpeg first talked about these. I love them so much. I get my four cables. I get them butted up. They all have a natural curve to them for being on the reel. So I get the clump, the natural curve in the same for all four pieces. Wow, okay, so I turn off the camera and I get a couple of strands pull out a little bit. Of course I do, because performance anxiety. So what I'm doing here is I'm just carefully putting it into the barrel of the ring terminal and making sure that none of the strands go outside and curl back. I want to make sure they're all going into the barrel. So I've got the four wires in the barrel, getting them roughly straight, flipping it over, and I'm looking to make sure that the cut ends are all the way through the barrel, but not sticking out too much. And then I crimp. There, and that's the first side done. So now I've got the ends all cut to roughly the same length. I'll get the next ring terminal, crimp it enough to grab it. And the biggest trick I found so far is just to make sure that when you seat these home, you don't have little strands going outside the barrel. And I flip it over, and I don't know if you can tell, but what I'm doing is, you see how there's a natural bend to it? Hopefully the editing will show that. One is sticking out a lot more than the other. So what I do is I just adjust, I can adjust the length of the four wires by moving this around. And I do that, I cut all the four wires to the exact same length. So by manipulating the angle, it pulls certain cables in and pushes others out. And I just manipulate it until all four are ending at about the same place. And then I crimp it home. And I wasn't paying attention and I totally just twisted this around. But so be it. You know what? That's why we make one extra. And also, I'm going to test just how far out this can be. This is me doing it on camera, so I wasn't paying attention and I screwed up. Let's see how much we can manipulate the cable. So what I mean by that is, see how the flat is off compared to this one? By that much. The major benefit of this configuration is because the four wires splay out, there's a lot more rotational freedom in the wire. Like this. So I put that home, bring that home, and you know what? It's out a little bit. Yep, that works fine. That's why I'm liking these 4 10-gauge wires instead of a single quad gauge, 4-gauge, is that I can take it and twist it this way a lot easier. I can bend it that way. It's just generally a lot more flexible. It is definitely a pain in the ass to make these, but you do it once in 5 years. Well, once times however many batteries you have, and if you're building a big pack like me, that's a lot. Prost. I have noticed that on a few occasions, one of the strands would be ripped out when I cut the end off, or when I stripped it, because these are so short. So what I'm doing now is I twist it like this. Can you see that? I grab it and I twist the wire just to provide a bit of resistance from any of the strands being pulled out. And then I strip it back about that much. Now I don't have to worry about the strands being pulled out because they're all crimped in this terminal, so I'm not bending it this time. I love this tool so much. Oh, okay, so actually let me show you this. So when I go to put this together, see how there's one that it's got more insulation left? Before I crimp it, I'm going to cut that off to get it to the same level as the others. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out how to position the 4 wires to let me make a U shape with the least amount of tension. Oh, this is so much easier than the single 4 gauge. I was very unsure at the beginning of the video whether this was worth the extra effort, but the more of these I make, the more I think it is absolutely worth the extra effort. It's just, you have to fiddle with it a bit more, but once you get those 4 wires splayed into this, I don't know what you'd call it, a fan configuration, it just folds so much easier. It's not pushing out on the cells, on the terminals. And if there's any kind of deviation in the ring terminal, like the actual ring terminals themselves, with the 4 wire, or the 4 gauge, I had to really use the bolt to push it down, and it was really fighting that. It was putting a lot of torque on the post. With these, it just falls flat. It's really simple. I'm so glad I decided to go through with this. I am really liking this. So I'm putting shrink tubing on the ends of these. I think it's really just cosmetic though, and that's fine. Cosmetics is an absolutely valid reason to do something. But the reason I'm saying it is, you can see pre-shrink, it doesn't sit, it pulls tight, but it's not a circle, right? So it's kind of gapping over and leaving an airspace between some of the wires. Is it really a big deal? No, honestly, I think it'd be fine even without heat shrink tubing. I'm putting it on, like I said, mostly because I like the cosmetics of it. I think it's pretty. I'm not going to be relying on this shrink tubing to keep the ends protected. That's just, if I've got humidity to the point where, inside the battery box, if I've got humidity to the point where it's causing me troubles, I've got much deeper problems. My viewfinder is making it not very clear, but there's a big gap in there, like a little cave. There's nothing I can do about that. So if you're copying this design, A, thank you and I'm sorry. B, if you want to save some money and some time, I don't think the shrink tubing is really helping much. That's all for now. I'll bring you back when I'm done. So I have made all of the extra flexible bus bars, and it is now almost 1 in the morning. This was not a quick task. That said, I really like it. And also the padding that goes all the way around. Yeah, I'm getting really happy with how this is turning out. Happy or not though, I've got to get to bed. I've got work in the morning. I was hoping to have this done by Friday, but I might still be filming until Friday. So whenever you see this, sorry it took a while. This is really fun. This is really satisfying. It's just also rather labor intensive. I'm going to continue on the other side of my pillow.